And these frame rails, they're a mirror image, so they're identical on both sides. Doesn't matter if it's left or right, they're both the same. Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution XRC and welcome to part 2 of this MST CFX-WS DC1 build. In part 2 of this series, we are going to go over putting together the chassis frame. For the chassis frame, you'll need the parts from parts bag 4, parts bag 14, as well as the chassis rails. For step 1 of the chassis frame, you'll need these following parts. You'll need 4 M3x6 button head screws, you'll need 16 M3x8 button head screws, you'll need 4 M3x10 button head screws, and you'll need 4 M3 lock nuts. Alright, so we'll start off with taking the 4 M3x10s right here and attaching the skid to the frame rails, because the skid sits in a portion where you can't just slide the other pieces in once the frame rails are put together. So and these frame rails, they're a mirror image, so they're identical on both sides. Doesn't matter if it's left or right, they're both the same. Make sure that the transmission cutout is on the further side away from you, if the frame rail is on this side. Well, actually it doesn't matter yet, but it'll matter later. Right now you could just basically rotate and it'll be the same on both sides, but for now, let's go ahead and put the skid on. There we go. Let's just hold one side first. It'll be a lot easier that way. Alright, so after you got the skid attached, the next thing you'll want are 2 M3x8s, 2 M3 lock nuts, and shock hoops, one of each, A and B. And there's a letter on the shock hoop that says either A or B. There's A. So right now what we're going to do, with the skid indentation furthest away from you, you're going to take shock hoop A. You're only going to mount one side first. So you need a screw and a lock nut. So I'm going to thread this through the shock hoop first. Oh, actually you don't need to. And basically you want to line it up with the end of the shock hoop on the last large hole right there. So you want to line it up there. You'll have 2 of these holes in front of the shock hoop, and go ahead and put the lock nut on. You probably could have done this step before the skid, but as long as you can get to it, you're fine. Alright, there's one. Now you take shock hoop B, do the same thing on the other side. M3x8 at the front of the hoop. Oh. M3 lock nut. Let's go ahead and get that one attached. Alright, now that you've got the front screw of these shock hoops attached, now you can go ahead and wedge the battery tray in there, in between the frame rails. Now this front part of the battery tray should not be within the frame rails, so it just starts with the middle one here. And we'll go ahead and use 4 M3x8s to attach the battery tray. Okay, now you want to get one of the cross members here and slide that into the rear. We'll actually have to wedge this one too a little bit. There you go. And you'll need another 4 M3x8s, sorry. And one goes where the rear of the shock hoop is. And the other one goes towards the rear of the cross member. I'll go over them all by hand again, just to double check. Alright, we've got the rear attached. Let's go ahead and move on to the front. Now with the front, we're going to have to wedge the transmission in here. But before we do that, let's actually let us wedge that transmission. Let's do the same thing we did with the shock hoops from the rear. We'll get now shock hoop A, and let's see here. Just have to line up the second hole right there. Take another M3x8. And we'll need another lock nut. So let's just do that first. Let's go ahead and do the same for the other side now. Alright, now that we've got those lock nuts out of the way, let's go ahead and slide that transmission in. Or wedge, not exactly slide. There we go. Okay. So we're going to take another M3x8 and we want to line up this transmission mount with the back hole. So if you look here, there's two holes right here, front hole, rear hole. Now the front hole should be in the middle of the shock hoop, and the rear hole should line up with the shock hoop. So with the one lined up with the shock hoop, you're going to use the M3x8 right here. Go ahead and screw that in. Now you'll need an M3x6. And that goes between the shock hoop M3x8 M3x6 Now you want to get the front cross member, put that in. The M3x6 is towards the rear. And the M3x8 towards the front. Alright, let's go over all those screws by hand and make sure they're tight enough and not over tightened. I do have my slipper clutch on my driver at 3, so usually it's not too tight. Alright, and that completes step 1 of the chassis frame. For step 2 of the chassis frame, you'll need these following parts: the drive shaft that goes between the transmission and the transfer case, these 2 pins, and 4 M3x14 countersunk screws. And let's take the previously built transfer case. Just go stick one of the pins in there. Alright, and there we have it. We are done with this part of the series. We are done with putting together the chassis frame. And that does it for this part of the series. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for future updates on this MST CFX-WS build series. Thanks for watching.